So another question from the 2023 paper 2, and this is a tricky one. This is a tricky question, so let's have a look at it. So you have got OCR security services, and they need to identify the total number of seconds the sensors have been activated on a specific date. So you've got dates here. You'll see you can have multiple entries for the same date. And then you've got the length here of how long those sensors were activated for. The data from the database table events, so you can see this is called events, is imported into the program. The program stores the data in a two-dimensional string array, so basically a table, rows and columns, and the data type string, with the identifier array events. It's confusing because they've said the database table is called events, and now they're saying that the 2D array within the program is called array events. We'll use array events. Right, so now down here we get told what we've got to do. We've got to write a program that asks the user to input a date, totals the number of seconds sensors have been activated on that date, outputs the calculated total in an appropriate message, including the date, and then it gives you an example. If it gives you an example, just go for that example, try and create that. Right, so the first thing we need to do is get a date from the user. The second thing we need to do is then scroll or loop through each row, looking at the item of data within that column, and if it equals the date that's been entered, we need to then move the column number from this one here, which would be 0 to 1, 2, 3, and then add up what's in that position. Right, I'm going to draw a text box and try. So here's my text box. So we know we're going to have to collect an input, so shall we do that first? Date to check equals input. You don't need to worry about data types, but we should definitely put in speech marks around the prompt. Next thing, we need to loop through this array. So for I in range, open brackets, we want to loop through the length of this array. So let's do length, and it was called array events. We now need to check whether or not the item in column 1 matches the date that's been entered. So the way you do that, we should do if array events square brackets I square brackets 0 square brackets colon. What that does, actually we don't want colon, we want if it's equal to date check. Now what this does is that is the row reference, that's the column reference, and they have 0 indexing. So what we actually want is we want it to start at 0, 0, which will pull out that date there. And I is a loop variable, so it starts at 0 and it goes up by 1 with each iteration of the loop. So it will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, which is really handy for us because we want it to go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So what those two lines of code will do is they will loop through this table, staying in column 0 but going down 1 each time, with the row, checking if it's the date that they've entered. Now I am just going to put in -1 here because this will count the number of rows in the array, but actually we don't want the number of rows because it starts at 0, so we want it to start at 0 and stop at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that -1 will do that for us. Okay. So if the date matches the item within the 2D array, then we need to, let me just check, total the number of seconds, so add it to the total. Okay, fine. Total equals the existing total plus this, what's in this column here. So here what we want is to get some data from the array again. We want it to be the same row that's currently being checked, but we want it to be column 0, 1, 2, 3, 3. That will add this to the total. We do need to have declared the total. When you're doing your algorithm questions, it's not a bad idea to kind of leave a bit of space at the top just in case you need to add something in that you've forgotten. Okay, so that should work. And then the last bit of the question, output the total. Now this has to be outside of the array, so remove any indentation, put it right over on the left hand side, and it said an appropriate message, didn't it? Here, and it's given us an example. So if we do print speech mark, sensors were activated for, then if we put in total seconds on date, check, there, that will do it. Very difficult question, probably the most difficult algorithm question that I've seen asked. Just have a quick look at the mark scheme. 1 mark for the input, so if you don't know how to do anything else, just put the input in. Access all 7 events in the array, okay, which we've done. An attempt at selection, so even if you try and do an if statement you get a mark. Compare the date against the date in the array, adding the length, which is what's in column 3, to the total, outputting the calculated total and date and appropriate message at the end. So if you didn't get any of this right and just outputted that total, that message, you'd get a mark. One thing to have a look at is this second example. The first example matches what we did, but the second one uses a for loop which just loops through items in the array. And if the item is equal to the date, so if the item 0 is equal to the date, then add what's in item 3. That's an easier way of doing it.